Well, if it's the weekend, it's time for another double header. We've got action coming from the outskirts of Mumbai. We've got action coming from the far outskirts of Mumbai. That is, of course, down the highway in Pune. Nothing at the Wankhede, nothing at the Brabourne today. It's action from the DY Patil in the afternoon and then over to the MCA Stadium in Pune. First up, it's Mumbai against Rajasthan. And later in the evening, there's the first game that we'll remind you of. That's the one that's coming up first. This is from the DY Patil Stadium, blue taking on pink. And in the afternoon, or rather in the evening, it's going to be one of the two new franchises in action again. Two very similar colors. It's going to be the Gujarat Titans taking on the Delhi Capitals. Right here on Cricbuzz Live, we're going to discuss it all and embrace ourselves with all the cricket that lies ahead. We have a star-studded panel. The boys are back together again. It's Joy and Harsha. Good afternoon, gents.
You're the only one who will refer to the two of us with our combined ages, boys. Joy is still young. Joy, of course, is still young and is conquering the world. But thank you for that anyway. Now, let's have a lot of fun. Let's have a lot of fun, as we always do.
That's the whole idea, Joy, but we just hope the players out there do, because it's a rare afternoon game. For once, we're talking about, the dew factor, hopefully, will not creep in, because that really has been a big part of this tournament so far.
Absolutely. 3:30 in the afternoon, these games are the most horrible games that you can ever play. It's really tough on the players, and this is not an easy tournament to play, but there's going to be some fantastic cricket on view, and I just love the two teams. I mean, this is just set up. Mumbai, 5 times champions, do very well all the time. And you have a team, Rajasthan, who tends to upset them once in a while. And post that 2014 6 by Aditya Tare and Rahul Dravid taking off his cap, there's always been a little bit there between these two teams.
Rahul Dravid taking off his cap. He did a lot more than that. Totally out of character, Harsha. When was the last, in your entire career of knowing Rahul Dravid? Yeah, there you go. Thank you. You demonstrated us for those who might have missed that.
You don't wear caps these days. You only sort of put on your mask and pretend it's a cap. Every time you look around the room, there's just masks in your room. I know Mumbai have said no more masks around, but we still live in a bubble. Yeah, I think he's a little embarrassed by that. I think it was his Ganguly taking off his shirt moment. But there've been a few. But guess what? We all thought Surya Kumar Yadav was going to play. Just hearing he's still not ready. So Anmolpreet Singh gets another game.
Yep, same playing 11. I was looking at all the little videos that were coming out of him training, and he had the thumb strapped up, so it didn't really look that good. I think they were just putting on a brave face. So that's a reminder of the Mumbai playing 11 having won the toss and asked Rajasthan to bat first. So that's the first news about the Mumbai playing 11. But we'll change track a little bit. We'll come to the Rajasthan team shortly. Since, Harsha, you mentioned about masks instead of caps, it's time to go back in time for a time when we didn't really know what masks were all about, Joy. And I think you've helped us in that journey, because we're all so embroiled in these last couple of years. It's good to go back even further than that. And you've been doing that with your retro reels. First one is up and running. I've seen it streaming from 1st April. Yes, reminding you that was not a joke. It was actually on. We all saw it on Cricbuzz Plus. Joy, but in relevance to retro reels, 2008 between these two teams, something significant?
No, absolutely. I think 2008, there was a terrific game, and but the person who could tell us more about that is probably not me. I think Harsha has a much better story about that one.
Retro. Yes, I remember that. I remember 2008 very well. MI and RR. And Bonnie was captain. I think it was game 27. I just looked it up while I was preparing. It was game 27. And I was doing a little bit of work with Mumbai Indians at the time. That was the game. I love to tell the story of Vaughan and Jadeja and the Rockstar. This was the game. I spotted Vaughan in a corner. I think he might have been smoking. But so I just sort of waved from a distance, and he did that, came along. So I've sort of gone along. There were a couple of others. And there was Ravindra Jadeja at a distance, little slim fellow, sort of being like this. And then Wani called him and said, he actually asked me, he said, do you know this young man? I said, he was in the under-19 World Cup. He said, no, he said, Jadu, come here. And he said, this guy's a rock star. Just keep an eye on him. He's going to be a rock star. So that was where the story happened. That was MI versus RR at DY Patil Stadium. RR got bowled out for 100 something. Mumbai won the game. And that evening, Shane Warne was the first to come to the party that the Mumbai Indians had hosted. And I'm there, so I'm saying, bad luck, Warnie. And he said, why? I said, no, today's game. He said, mate, sometimes it's good to get a kick up the backside early on because I don't want this to happen at a later stage in the tournament. They must realize that if they play crap, they're going to lose. So I have fond memories of that, of MI versus RR from the past. So there's a few MI-RR stories.
Yep, that's probably also the way Shane Warne was all his life. Straight talking, came out exactly as he was. And that's one of the reasons why an unheralded Rajasthan side went on to take the title in season 1. But Joy, when it comes to this head-to-head record, yes, 2008 may go into your retro reels and one of those times when Mumbai actually won, but it's not a great record for Mumbai against Rajasthan.
No, I think Rajasthan has a stellar record, and I think it's a part of it. I mean, I think one of the players that Mumbai has been eyeing for a very long time, Sanju Samson has quite a bit to do with it. I think he's had some stellar knocks against them, sometimes the Wankhede Day as well. And yes, for a team, if you see there's some, Mumbai is a strange team that they have fantastic records against some teams. They have fantastic record against Kolkata, for example. And Rajasthan, who has comparatively been a modest team in the last 7, 8, 10 years, they have a very, very good record against Mumbai. And it's interesting because the other part of it is that if you look at it, both Mumbai and Rajasthan, their headquarters are in Mumbai. So their offices are practically about 5 kilometers apart in Mumbai. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, well, they're not the only franchises to be headquartered there. The entire tournament is headquartered there at the moment. But Mumbai are unchanged. Rajasthan are not. So let's quickly take you to the Rajasthan lineup. And this is where it lies. Remember, they'll be batting first. And Nathan Coulter-Nile goes out. So once again, they keep to the tradition or early season tradition this year, Harsha, of no 4 aeroplanes in a single lineup. Nathan Coulter-Nile out, Navdeep Saini in.
I'm just trying to see. You know what? I'm looking down who RR have. They're Nathan Coulter-Nile, James Neesham, and Daryl Mitchell. Now, obviously, they want a bowler first. Because they're not sure of Riyan Parag, there's no other bowling in there. They want a bowler first. And because they want a bowler first, they could have gone to Neesham, they could have gone to Mitchell. But they've gone with Navdeep Saini because, as I said, they want this bowler first. It obviously tells me Ubaid McCoy is not fit yet. Because they've not gone for batting ability. Ubaid McCoy has not got batting ability. He's a wonderful death bowler, which is always very handy. Because Saini is not giving you much with the bat. He does sometimes, but if you're looking at that, then you're in trouble. So if you look at both sides today, their batting sort of tails off pretty quickly. And that's going to be interesting to see what the approach is going to be. Because Ashwin is 7. And then straight away you're into Saini and the others from 8, Saini and Chahal and all the others. And you see Mumbai Indians, they've got Murugan Ashwin at 8 and Bumrah and the others down at 9. So it's going to be interesting to see how they play. You don't want to go to Bumrah, Mills or Thampi with the bat. And Murugan Ashwin is okay. It's not like he's winning you games with the bat.
Yeah,
I think that is also the reason they're playing Sams. Their option was to play. They have another bowler, right? Riley Meredith.
They have Riley Meredith. That's who was discussing.
That's
yesterday.
the Mumbai squad.
That would have taken away from the batting. And then instead of, they could have looked at Basil Thampi and said, okay, so Basil Thampi, can we get someone who bats a little bit? Maybe a Ramandeep Singh or someone. But I don't think that's working out. They like the pace that Thampi generated. So they're saying, okay, we'll take Murugan Ashwin's batting and basically we'll get our top 7 to win us the game.
I was hearing whispers about Fabian Allen being considered as well as a possible replacement, but Rajasthan, ironically, used to actually.
That's the other name. Sorry, Drew. That's the other name. Had they gone in for Fabian Allen instead of Daniel Sams, then they are left with Bumrah, with Basil Thampi and Timal Mills. Some people have said that that's good enough, but yeah.
And Rajasthan, Joy, actually used to pride themselves on having a few very handy batters coming down at 7, 8, sometimes even 9, when the likes of, say, Shreyas Gopal would be there and contribute with the bat. But for now, that's obviously looking a little more batting heavy.
Yeah, look, this is my belief. My belief is that both these teams are reasonably confident about their batting. And the kind of scores that by and large have happened, fresh pitches, ball is coming on, D.Y. Patil has been a bit of a run factory. People are getting big runs out here. So I think what they're saying is that the top 7 batsmen better do it out here. Where they're finding teams really suffer, and here Ajay Jadeja will be very happy to hear this in the Hindi studio, is when they don't have 5 decent bowlers to put at the pitch. So I think it's a definite move out there saying that, look, if the top 7 guys can't do it for you, these are not the kind of pitches where people are getting 140 and 150 crawling, and someday it is going to play a crucial 19 of 17 balls and wait for them. These are pitches where if you don't have good bowlers, you could be blasted for 200, 220. And I think that's the move, specialist bowlers. I really like the fact that Rajasthan has traditionally been not very high on Indian personnel and having a few international superstars. So for Rajasthan to play 3 international players, I find it a brave move, and I find it, this is a new Rajasthan, whether it's Sangakkara in his second year, whatever is happening out here, this Rajasthan looks very different from the Rajasthan we've seen over the years.
To be fair,
wasn't Rajasthan, wasn't Rajasthan the team that late into the auction only had, I'm seeing the order in which I'm going by my old notes, they had Butler, Bolt, Hetmeyer and Obed McCoy. They only had 4 overseas players, and I think they might have bought the remaining 4 in the last half hour or 45 minutes of the auction. So maybe they couldn't structure the team as well as they would have liked to, because both they've got Rassi Fantadusen, but they don't need an overseas batsman. They've got Mitchell, but they're not sure of 4 overs from him. So I think they're a little hamstrung at the moment. I mean, Prasidh Krishna's had a great game. The 4 bowlers that they've got are fantastic. And if Saini delivers and he does have some pace, then they'd probably say the 5 bowlers are good enough.
Yeah, but I think to be fair, Harsha, the way Prasidh Krishna and Bolt bowled the other day, they probably made Nathan Coulter-Nile look even worse than his normal ability. And he was the only one who got hit for a few.
Yeah. And I think if you notice, I think towards the end, he had started to hold some part of his body as well. So when you've got people like Nathan Coulter-Nile, Mitch Marsh, Andre Russell, those kind, then even a little twitch you start to worry about. In fact, I'm told that KKR have taken out a huge insurance policy on Andre Russell every time he dives.
Quite possible. It's quite possible.
What an innings he played yesterday. So no more talk about Andre Russell and his fitness after what he did yesterday. If I can digress a little bit, one of the great aspects of yesterday's game, Andre Russell's coming back. I'm going down to do the presentation, and I said, not fair on another young Jamaican. Not fair, not fair, not done. And he just laughed it off, and he said, but I tell him to bowl the Yorker. So, they're having that conversation. But soon after the presentation, for about 15, 20 minutes, Andre Russell was sitting with Udin Smith. And I thought that, to me, was the IPL in a nutshell. That I've just hammered the daylights out of you, and now I'm telling you where to bowl.
Yeah, in fact, I mean, we weren't privy to that conversation between Harsha and Ray Russ, but what we did see, Joy, were those a little glimpse of those pictures of Odin Smith, who's always been, never mind his size, he's always been like this wide-eyed youngster, at least in the CPL. He goes to everybody, he tries to get something out of them, and no better than Andre Russell after he's been hit.
And after he's being hit, as I said, Andre Russell he's the nicest man after the game. Just before the game during the game is a big problem. He's the nicest possible,
were you in
sweetest
control,
man after the game.
Were you in control? Were you sort of okay while all that was going on?
No, Andre Russell now is certified that you have Andre Russell, you take your medication to calm yourself down, have a couple of tablets and then sit down, because otherwise what he's going to do on a pitch either way is just going to drive everyone crazy. But I'll
go to Sunil Narayan as well. Anyway, let's come to today's game.
Yeah, let's come to today's
Sunil
game.
Narayan won't speak a word. I think you call Sunil Narayan 20 years from now, he'll still be bowling for KKR 4028 or something,
No, I thought the sentence that you said earlier just summed it up. Sunil Narayan won't say a word. That's period. Won't say a word. That's the tweet. But somebody who's been saying a lot and allowing the ball to talk, Joy, looks a transformed person, Prasidh Krishna. He was, in the context, since we've discussed so much of KKR, he was in KKR, showed glimpses, but was never this lethal bowler who was the lead of your strike force. What a transformation.
No, absolutely. And I think firstly, his India stint has done a lot of good stuff for him. He's really that confidence that he's good enough to play for the country, because KKR's problem was in the last 3-4 years, their selection policy with bowlers was such that nobody really felt secure. They kept moving around. They kept moving from bowler to fast bowler to fast bowler. There's Nagarkoti, there's Mavi, there's all these guys. So now Prasidh Krishna, suddenly somebody's paid 10 crores for him, say that you're worth it. You are the spearhead of our attack. And the one thing Bharat Arun once said, and I think it's totally true, he says that he has that ability to bowl 3 or 4 unplayable deliveries. And I think that defines him, that when you have a bowler up front who can bowl, maybe get you 2 or 3 deliveries that are wicket-taking deliveries, it makes a huge difference. Prasidh Krishna is a wicket-taking bowler. He's not a defensive bowler. Again, he's being used well, exactly as, for example, Umesh Yadav is doing with KKR now. He's been told, go and attack. And this is what Prasidh Krishna is doing up front. I mean, he's really, look at that economy rate. That's an amazing economy rate. Okay, this is just one match and therefore it's very little data to go on. But, I mean, he just bowled so beautifully up front. He just set up the game for them. And by that time, if you have a lead, if you've already scored 200, when you have your first 3 overs that go down from one side like that, the game is more than over.
Also, this white ball's doing a little bit more. If you remember the white ball back in the UAE, when if you looked at it long enough, it stopped swinging. Right? The white ball, as someone that swang, the white ball swang only for a little while. If a couple swung and you said, oops, what's happening? Whereas here you see Umesh Yadav has bowled a great opening burst. Prasidh Krishna has bowled an excellent opening burst. Trent Bolt has. So if Rajasthan gets some runs on the board, then that attack, Trent Bolt and Prasidh Krishna versus Rohit Sharma and Ishan Kishan, and there's pretty good matchups over there, will be fabulous to watch. I mean, it's the kind you say, don't leave your seat and go anywhere. And hang on, aren't Rajasthan Royals the only team to win batting first so far?
Yep, they are. Yep, everyone else is chased down.
Okay.
Even 200 plus has been chased down. 210 has been chased down. But that's the only one exception. And they are, of course, batting first today. But the other side of the coin, Harsha, and I think you were on commentary when it happened, was when we were looking at a gentleman called Jasprit Bumrah having an off day.
And when does that happen? And every time he came on, he was getting pumped. Every time he came on, someone was going after him. And it's almost like he's your go-to bowler. So you say, okay, it doesn't matter. I've still got Bumrah up. And he comes back, and every over, it's not that there was one huge over and then he came back and bowled 2 very well. But I think early days, everyone's still figuring out how to bowl on these pitches, because they're absolute belters, these pitches. So maybe here he'll still be bowling in the evening. He won't be bowling while dew is on. I know there's a big move at the moment, by the way, to try and do something about the dew. But he's got very good matchups against all these people. And Bumrah bowls well. I think they'll also be looking at Sam's closely, because if Sam starts well, Bumrah bowls well, then it's a pretty good bowling lineup with Murugan Ashwin. First time I saw Murugan Ashwin, I rated Murugan Ashwin. So it's a very good bowling lineup if Sams can start well and Bumrah's in form.
Yeah, that was an anomaly, and it's not something we always see, Joy. But he just looked. I mean, on the one side, we were talking about the Prasidh Krishna factor and the body language and how his stint has improved him. Bumrah was almost at some stage looking like, look, I'm Jasprit Bumrah. How could you do this to me? But the batsman kept doing it to him.
Yeah, look, it happens. It's one of these days it happens. And remember, this is early in the season. Mumbai wakes up later. It's all about, latitudes and what time the sun rises in your part of the world. So Mumbai cannot start early. I mean, that's given. That's geography has already decided that Mumbai can't start early. And it's very interesting. But see, last match, you've had your opponents play a picture-perfect batting game. Okay, they did nothing wrong. Rajasthan did nothing wrong. Your bowling did not very much right. I mean, the best bowling performances were by Basil Thampi and Murugan Ashwin, not by your heralded sort of top order, fast bowlers. So this can't. I mean, they've just had one guy's had a perfect match, one guy's had a pretty bad match. I think the balance will come much closer to that. And that's the other thing, that if you're batting at 7 and you don't have Nathan Coulter-Nine and you're playing Navdeep Saini, if Bumrah gets a few early wickets, it could be very interesting.
Certainly would. And if Bumrah does get early wickets, one of the matchups that we like to talk about would be the opposition captain. Also in the top of the order, also has looked really good. Hopefully, Harsha, we're getting to the stage when we've stopped saying that Sanju Samson gives you a little sketch and hands it to you. You want him to paint that big canvas.
Yeah,
Something like the painting behind you.
I can't make out. I'm the kind who looks at paintings and I want to see the forms and guess what it is. the imagination very often for me is in the eyes of the painter, not in the eyes of the beholder. So I can't understand paintings very well. Sometimes that you get the feeling just squiggles like you and I can do. But I think Sanju Samson's time has come. Sometimes we just look at people, they look far more relaxed with who they are. I just think his time has come. Since he's become captain, if you have someone giving you that average and strike rate, you're drooling. And Joy mentioned that more than one franchise was interested in Sanju Samson. That's absolutely true. Every single franchise would have been chasing Sanju Samson and saying, are you coming back into the auction? Are you coming back into the auction? And I think Rajasthan Royals did very well. They said, no, we want you. We'll give you the captaincy. We'll give you this amount of money. Stay here with us and make your fortune here with us. So I think he's ready. A couple of games here and there, it will happen. But the consistency has definitely come back into Sanju Samson's game. And he always looks $1 million. It's just that this time it's not $1 million note like the equivalent of which we had in Zim, if you remember, just sort of fluttering away like that. This is here to stay.
The problem, Harsha, was we didn't have that $1 million note.
I know. We wish we had.
We need to spend $1 million in Zim. It all came in $20, $50 bills. So we had to fill back.
And the $1 million, the $1 million bill. If you had gone on that particular tour, I don't want to be derogatory about a country that both you and I have a soft corner for. You especially, you traveled a lot. We have a very soft corner for Zim. But it was one country where you look and you say, he's looking $1 million. And you say, yeah, that's all.
Yeah, the first meal on the first night I had there was $6 million. $6 million. And it wasn't a lot. It's just we had to actually fork out that much in paper. And someone drew a short straw at the end of the meal. They're the ones who had to count it because they didn't have counting machines.
Yeah, I so wish that country turns around. You remember the jacaranda lined trees, the beautiful purple flowers. It was so beautiful, and they're just going down one road without turning all the way to the Victoria Falls. It was stunning. You wish every country turns around, but I do wish Zim turns around and use this opportunity to say, I hope Sri Lanka turns around. I have so many friends over there. I'm anguished at what's happening in Sri Lanka. But we'll come back to the cricket because we keep making these day tours. Yes,
but that's what we are. If you get the three of us together, I suspect it's not going to be cricket for 30 minutes flat. But yeah, that's as far as... but coming back to Sanju Samson, the captain, Joy, again, we're talking about personalities and body language. He's not necessarily the most expressive person in the world, but he seems to have taken to captaincy in the exact opposite way as, say, Ravindra Jadeja hasn't.
Look, Sanju is a very confident boy, and there's a reason for it. Sanju has been playing with people much older to him for a very, very long time. The first time I saw Sanju was in a KKR camp when we called him in 2009 when he was 13 years old. So at 13 years old, he was playing with adults. By the time he goes back, he's played the under-19 in 2014. He's gone back to play in Kerala. He's playing with everyone who's older to him. So he's already used to batting much above his weight, and therefore playing much above his level of people his age. And that's translated at the senior level for Kerala as well. And therefore, he has that kind of presence. He's not at all overawed by anyone. He's a kind of guy, and therefore he cannot have an authoritative coach. He needs somebody like a Sangakkara, who's a guy who's going to put his arm around him, rather than a guy saying, okay, let me tell you what to do. Sanju reacts much better to coaches who sort of give him that, sit with him, give him that, understanding, give him that respect and give it. So I think the way they've gone in coaching is also a lot to do with how comfortable Sanju felt with him, because they're very invested.
And I agree. Yeah, I agree. I got to know Sanju reasonably well. He's still only 26, right? He's just 26, 27. So, this era, it's not the end of the world. He was very intense, very philosophical, intense about life. I think he's far more relaxed. I've got a weakness on this front. I think it's also when you settle down and meet a good companion. I think that makes a huge difference in life. So I think that's also happened with Sanju Samson. And he can look at where Surya Kumar Yadav's career has gone. At 26, 27, Surya Kumar Yadav's career was actually going nowhere. And in the 4 years after that, he's actually played a T20 World Cup. He's become a feared batsman. Everyone looks and says, oh, okay, Surya Kumar Yadav's coming into bat. So you can have a life ahead of you. If Surya can have a life ahead of you when you're 30, then he can have a life ahead of him at 26. He's not playing today, but I think that'll hit Mumbai hard. But a more general statement.
Yeah, that's why it's big news that Surya Kumar Yadav, just to confirm, if you missed it at the beginning of the show, that injury obviously hasn't healed enough. He's been batting in the nets. We've still seen it strapped up. but I think they're just letting it get a little bit more time for them to see when he's fully ready.
There's something about these fractures going on. How long did Jadeja take to come back from a fracture? People are taking much longer. You would have thought it's a little fracture to the finger. It'll come back quickly. So it's taking longer.
Yeah, we've got, of course, all of you who join in, not just passively, actively, and send in your questions to us on hashtag #AskCricbuzz So we've picked one for this particular show, and let's quickly slip that in before the game gets underway. This comes from Hitesh Rajani. Rohit Sharma more circumspect when opening for Mumbai than for India. As recently as the home series versus West Indies and Sri Lanka, he opened with Ishan and played the aggressor. Why doesn't he do the same for Mumbai? Could we expect that today later in the afternoon, Harsha?
I would like to, because there are two Rohit Sharmas. You're right. Rohit Sharma for Mumbai Indians over the last 3 or 4 years hasn't been this Rohit Sharma we love watching, right? 124 strike rate, 32 average, Basra under 160. And he's not been the scary Rohit Sharma for Mumbai Indians for a while. And he can be. I just wonder whether he sees his role differently. Whether he says there's Ishan Kishan, there's Surya Kumar Yadav, there's Kyron Pollard, there used to be Hardik Pandya, Krunal Pandya, let me play a different role. But I just hope he goes. And we saw glimpses of that in the last game too, when Ishan Kishan then picked up afterwards. So I won't be surprised. I won't be surprised at all if we see Rohit Sharma take it on, because I think that's the way they've structured their side this year. Tilak Verma is another batsman who just come and take it on. Then Tim David, Kyron Pollard, Daniel Sams. So I think he will. Unless Ishan Kishan just starts hammering everything and he says, okay, let me watch this young man.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I also completely believe, that he waits to see what's happening. He reads the game and decides whether he needs to be the aggressor and take unnecessary risks or not. If somebody's going well at the other end, I think he doesn't think that this is my role. He plays it and watches the other batsman. He used to do that a lot with Quinton as well. I mean, just when Quinton didn't get going, that's when Rohit started going to take unnecessary risks. So no, I believe Rohit is Rohit. I mean, he'll hit one shot and you'll wonder, why do we even have these doubts about the man? He's just such a brilliant stroke player.
Well, we started the show talking about retro reels. We'll finish the show talking about retro questions. Where in time are you taking us back for your quiz question today, Joy?
Actually, this is a question about a current player. So which current Indian cricketer, that doesn't mean that he necessarily plays international cricket at this point for India, made his first-class debut about 5 months before his Test debut. That means within 5 months, he made it to Test cricket. And his T20 debut 5 years after his Test debut. More than 5 years. So when I say more than 5 years, 5 years, 6 months, 5 years, 7 months after.
That's one thinking. T20 5 years after, played Test cricket first. A few options come to mind. It's all up to you. Try and figure it out. Not too many clues in there. Hashtag Cricbuzz Live. Get your answers in. How quickly will they come in? We know they come in pretty quickly. But how quickly we throw our numbers out. Rajasthan lost the toss. They're batting first. It's an afternoon game. They've won. They're the only team to have put a total on the board and successfully defended it in the tournament so far. In the light of that, Shri Bhogle, Shri Bhattacharjya, what are your predictions for a 20-over score?
We're both waiting for the other to start.
Okay, I'll go. I think that Rajasthan had the perfect start last time, and the lightning doesn't often strike twice. I'm going to go with 168.
Mumbai started well. They're giving the new ball to Bumrah, first of all, which is not a bad thing. I'm going with Rohan Gavaskar's pitch report, where he says it's a much better track to bat on. So I'm actually going 179.
179. Leave me much room to maneuver. Fine, I'll go higher. I'll go 186. 186, which still, going by what we've seen so far, could be a gettable total. We don't know what par is going to be, but I think that's the beauty of this tournament. Many teams have found out that even 200 could be slightly below par. What's going to happen here? It's action at the DY Patil. We've got, of course, got a double header, but much more to talk about Delhi and Gujarat later on. For now, from Harsha, Joy and myself, we'll see you soon. 10th over Cricbuzz Combox. That's all round from Cricbuzz Live.